friends, I'm Kate. Welcome to Farm Bread. Today we're coming inside to show you how to make a simple and easy sourdough starter. Now I know some of you have tried it without success and others have been deterred by the maintenance alone, but I can assure you it's simple, and with a little upfront patience and practice, it will become habit and second nature for you. There's some great videos on YouTube that will explain the science behind your starter, how the fermentation process develops, and what that actually means. Definitely check them out for detailed information and to learn more. But what I'm going to teach you is actually how to feel your starter and how to keep it thriving in a very simple way, using your intuition. It doesn't need to be difficult, friends. And this will actually carry into my bread recipes as well. I feel like as a society, we get so caught up in the process and measurements and steps that it becomes really overwhelming and really unnatural. Bread is one of the most natural things. It's been around for 10,000 years and it's to be devoured and cherished. Contrary to what you may have heard, it's not rocket science. It's all about the love and trusting yourself. Yes, I am still talking about sourdough starter. If you have a pet, it's the same exact process. You love it, you feed it daily, and you watch it grow. But with your starter, if you want to go on vacation, you just put it in your fridge for a week. You can't do that with a dog, right? There are days I forget to feed my starter, and you know what? It's okay. Once you have a prospering starter, it can take a hit every now and then, and you'll be able to bring it back to life. I promise. So let's get started. First and foremost, I recommend getting this book if you're going to be in it for the long haul. It's called Artisan Sourdough Made Simple, and it's by Emily Rafa. I found her writing and techniques to be incredibly clear and easy to follow. She has a few pages with photographs on how to make your starter, which I've found to be the best instructions yet, and then offers an abundance of delicious bread recipes to follow. I continue to use this for many of my recipes and also for inspiration. So we'll be developing our starter in a similar way. It's important to know that your starter will take about 7 days to develop and to be ready to use. Don't get impatient, it's just 1 week. Plan accordingly so that it's active and ready to go when you're ready to make your first loaf of sourdough. So let's talk about the tools you'll need. When bread making in general, you'll want a digital kitchen scale that has gram and milliliter units of measure. This is the one I have, and it's great because you can zero it out. I think I spent maybe $10 or $12 for this off Amazon. It's pretty simple, but it gets the job done. It's great. You really don't need anything too expensive. You'll also need 2 jars with a lid that can be lightly closed. I use recycled marinara jars as well as ball jars, and they both work great. Any clean jar with a lid will suffice as long as it holds about 16 ounces. And you'll also need a large spoon and a rubber band. That's not too difficult, right? Now, let's talk ingredients. Let's see if you can remember this. Flour and water. That's it. That's the amazingness behind sourdough. We use 2 ingredients that ferment together and create this amazing substance called starter that makes bread rise. It's so simple. That's the beauty of life. So for the flour, you'll want to use a high quality whole wheat flour such as King Arthur. I always recommend organic if it's available nearby. I'm actually using an organic whole wheat flour that I milled myself from organic red and white wheat berries, but any high quality flour like King Arthur or Arrowhead Mills will work. For the water, I recommend a good quality water. If your tap is fine, use it. I filter our water through our Berkey as an added benefit, but it's not necessary. Water should be around room temperature, so keep that in mind if you're using it direct from the faucet or the refrigerator. To get started, we're going to go ahead and measure about 60 grams of whole wheat flour and 60 grams of room temperature water. So we'll take our scale, we're going to zero it out. Actually, we'll put our glass jar on, and then we'll zero it out. We're also going to make sure that our unit of measure is set to grams, and it's zeroed out. Then we're going to take 60 grams of our whole wheat flour and add that to the jar. I usually just pour this in, but since I'm doing this on camera, I thought I would try to be a little bit better. Next, we're going to measure out 60 grams of our room temperature water. Perfect. All right, now all we're gonna do is stir these two together. Make sure that there's no flour in the bottom. Sometimes flour can settle in the edges of the bottom, so you wanna make sure that you get all of that out. Everything is mixed really well. And then you can scrape down the sides of your jar. And what you're going to have is a kind of like a pasty, a pretty thick pasty type substance. Let me show you. This is kind of what it's going to look like. It's kind of gloppy. That's what you want. So pretty thick. Then what you're going to do is you're going to take your rubber band and you're going to put it around the height level of your starter. I'm going to actually go back in and flatten this out a little bit because sometimes I'm a perfectionist. And then what you're going to do last is put your lid on top gently. So we don't want a firm, tight seal. We just want a lightly covered. So you're going to want to set your starter aside in a draft-free area such as a cabinet or a pantry. I keep mine in our cabinet above our flour and near our Berkey, so it's really easy for me to remember to feed it when I need to. That's it for day one. It's so simple, and now the fun begins. Let your starter sit for 48 hours. You can peek at it tomorrow on day 2 just to see if you can notice any small black dots or bubbles, but you don't want to actually feed it until day 3. So on day 3, around the same time that you mixed your starter on day 1, you'll begin the feeding process. Now it's acting more like a pet. To feed your starter, grab a spoon and grab that second jar. Now remove about a half of the top portion of your starter and throw it out. Then scrape out the remaining starter and place it in your new clean jar. Add 60 grams of either a high quality all-purpose flour or a whole wheat flour. Now I always use my fresh milled whole wheat flour when feeding my starter, but you don't have to. Then add 60 grams of room temperature water. Mix the ingredients together and then scrape down the sides of the jar. The texture should resemble kind of like a thick batter or a yogurt. Place a rubber band around the jar at the height of your starter, cover it loosely, and place it back in your cabinet until the next day. You'll repeat this process for the next 3 days. Try to feed your starter at the same time each day for consistency, similar to feeding a pet. You'll notice bubbles are forming and your starter is growing. Each day, the starter will bubble and rise above the rubber band, which is really fun to see. It will also fall back down, and once it does, this signifies it's hungry and needs to be fed. And this is usually a 24-hour process. By the 7th day, it should appear double in size and with the rubber band in the middle. When your starter is active and bubbly and double in size, that's when you want to use it. That's what makes your bread rise. If your starter's flat when you use it, chances are your bread will also be flat. And that's it. That's all there is to it. You just have to remember to feed your starter daily, which takes a whole 2 minutes. Mark your calendar, set alerts at first, whatever it takes to get the first week under your belt, and then it's smooth sailing. It will become second nature. Now, there are some things to consider, like once you're on to your second week, you can reduce the amount of ingredients you're using to save on waste. I started feeding my starter daily with 40 grams each of flour and water. Also, consider how many loaves you plan to make in a week. If you're only making bread once or twice a week, you may want to store your starter in the fridge more often so you're not feeding it daily and wasting as much flour. To do that, feed your starter and put it in the fridge. The day before you want to use it, take it out of the fridge and let it come to room temperature. And once it is at room temperature, you feed your starter and then let it rest in your cabinet until the next day. When you're ready to use it, depending on timing, you may need to keep an eye on your starter to ensure it's active, bubbly, and doubled in size at that time that you want to use it. This is why I say you need to feel it. Observe the starter, and regardless of the instructions, if it's doubled in size, it's ready to use. If it doesn't have any bubbles, your bread won't rise. So look at it and check it before you use it to make sure it's ready. The texture will tell you many things. In fact, I've been making my breads long enough that I don't measure out my flour and water when I make my starter anymore. I go by my eyesight and by the way the starter feels. I know if the texture is too thick, I'll add more water, and if it's too thin, I'll add more flour. It's a natural process, and once we know what to look for and what it means, then we know how to make adjustments when needed. It's a really beautiful process. I wish you so much luck on your journey into sourdough bread making. Its age-old wisdom has taught me much, and I hope it does the same for you. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out and comment below. Please like and subscribe to follow along my journey for more tips on how to make simple, easy, homemade artisan breads. Happy sourdough making!